A loving husband vanishes during a quiet morning hunt. His boat found drifting, his gear untouched, and no body ever recovered. The police blamed alligators. But his mother? She knew it was murder. What she uncovered will leave you speechless. It was just before dawn on December 16, 2000, when Mike Williams quietly slipped out of bed, kissed his wife and baby goodbye, and drove off into the dark North Florida morning. It was his 6th wedding anniversary. But he had plans before the celebrations, duck hunting at Lake Seminole, one of his favorite spots. Mike was known as a responsible man, a doting father, a loving husband, and a hard-working real estate appraiser. He never missed a commitment. So when he failed to return home by noon, his wife, Denise Williams, grew concerned. Calls were made, friends were alerted, and before long, Lake Seminole was swarming with searchers, friends, law enforcement, and volunteers. They found his truck. They found his empty boat, floating aimlessly. They even found his decoys and his shotgun still inside the boat. But there was no trace of Mike. The immediate theory: a tragic hunting accident. Maybe he'd fallen overboard and drowned. But there was another, more sinister possibility floating in the background: alligators. This was North Florida after all, and Lake Seminole was known for them. Rescue workers noted dozens of large gators in the water during the search. The idea that Mike had been eaten took hold, and for a while, it seemed like the most plausible explanation. But Cheryl Williams, Mike's mother, didn't believe it. Not for a second. From the moment Mike disappeared, Cheryl was relentless. She refused to believe her son had drowned, and the idea that alligators had consumed his body without a trace, unacceptable. He didn't just fall out of a boat, Cheryl would tell anyone who'd listen. He was murdered. She launched her own investigation. She stood outside churches with picket signs. She paid for billboards across Tallahassee. She wrote a letter to the governor of Florida every single day for 9 years. 1,472 letters in total. She compiled 27 single-spaced pages of observations, inconsistencies, and questions. She even noted the strange timing of events, like how a pair of waders believed to be Mike's mysteriously surfaced in the lake 6 months after the disappearance, just in time for a court hearing that would declare Mike legally dead. Her fight was lonely. Denise had cut Cheryl off, denying her access to her only grandchild and threatening to do so permanently if she kept pushing for an investigation. But Cheryl never stopped. Despite exhaustive search efforts, including grid sweeps, cadaver dogs, and helicopters, Mike's body was never found. After 44 days, the search was called off. Officially, he was listed as missing. But in many people's minds, the mystery was closed. Denise quickly moved to collect on Mike's life insurance policies, worth a combined $1.75 million. That alone raised eyebrows. Mike's friend Brian Winchester had sold him one of those policies just 6 months before he vanished, a $1 million policy. Brian was not just Mike's insurance agent, he was also his best friend since high school. Their wives were close, their families vacationed together, and their lives seemed deeply intertwined. It all looked too perfect, but what no one knew, at least not publicly, was that Brian Winchester and Denise Williams had been having an affair for years. And just a few years after Mike disappeared, Brian and Denise got married. The community, once filled with grief, began to murmur. Cheryl's campaign finally caught the attention of the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, FDLE. Investigators Derek Wester and his team agreed to meet with her. She had it all broken down, Wester later said. All these inconsistencies, they started adding up. The life insurance, the strange surfacing of Mike's hunting gear, the lack of alligator feeding evidence, confirmed by herpetologists who stated that alligators do not feed during cold winter months. None of it made sense. Investigators started asking hard questions, and the names Denise Williams and Brian Winchester kept popping up. The FDLE learned that a witness had seen Brian at Lake Seminole the morning Mike disappeared, contradicting Brian's alibi that he was 60 miles away. What's more, evidence suggested the waders had not been submerged for 6 months. They were too clean. But despite these troubling details, the case stalled. There was no body, no physical evidence, and without either, no one could be charged. Eventually, Brian and Denise's marriage began to unravel. By 2016, they were separated. Facing serious prison time, he cracked. In exchange for immunity on the murder, Brian Winchester agreed to confess everything. And what he revealed was horrifying. Brian Winchester told investigators that he and Denise Williams had been having an affair for 3 years before Mike's disappearance. To outsiders, the Williams marriage appeared stable, a picture-perfect suburban life. But behind closed doors, Denise had no interest in divorce. She feared the social shame, the impact on her daughter, and the judgment of her conservative Tallahassee community. So instead of ending her marriage legally, she and Brian devised a chilling alternative. Brian would kill Mike during a planned duck hunting trip. On the morning of December 16, 2000, Brian invited Mike for a hunting excursion at Lake Seminole, a favorite spot of Mike's. They launched the boat before sunrise, just two old friends heading out into the still waters. But it was all a setup. While out on the lake, Brian shoved Mike into the cold, dark water, intending for him to drown. But Mike didn't go quietly. He fought. He found footing on a submerged tree stump and struggled to stay above water. Panicked that the plan was falling apart, Brian pulled out a shotgun and shot Mike at point-blank range in the face, killing him instantly. With Mike dead, Brian moved quickly to stage the scene. He removed the body, transported it to a remote, swampy area near Carr Lake, only minutes from his home, and buried it in a shallow grave. Then he returned to Lake Seminole, abandoned Mike's boat, and left Mike's truck and trailer parked nearby to make it look like a tragic accident. Denise, according to Brian's confession, had orchestrated and approved the plan. She didn't just know about the murder, she was the driving force behind it. She even benefited financially, collecting nearly $2 million in life insurance after Mike was declared legally dead. A few years later, she quietly married Brian Winchester. For nearly 17 years, Mike's mother, Cheryl Williams, refused to believe the official story. While law enforcement told her to accept that Mike drowned, she never stopped searching. She wrote hundreds of letters to public officials, pushed for renewed investigations, and campaigned relentlessly for the case to be reopened. She always believed that something sinister had happened, and that Denise and Brian knew more than they ever admitted. Then, in 2016, everything changed. Brian Winchester, spiraling emotionally and financially, kidnapped Denise at gunpoint during a confrontation in her car. She escaped and reported the incident. That arrest opened a crack in the wall of silence. With Brian now facing a lengthy sentence for kidnapping, authorities offered him a deal: immunity from murder charges if he told them everything. In 2017, he confessed to killing Mike and led investigators to the burial site near Carr Lake. On October 20th, 2017, investigators uncovered Mike's skeletal remains, along with personal effects including his wedding ring. An autopsy confirmed the truth. Mike had been shot in the face. There was no drowning, no accident, no wildlife attack.